don't know if I will.
I know the guy that wrote that.
Yeah. I actually don't need the book, but I do want to. Are we ready? Okay.
Oh, let's go with the book.
All right. I wrote the little thing. I liked it. I'm trying to. We just do the same thing. Go ahead. I said we tend to do the same. We say all the same words all the time. You're welcome. And I think people just stop listening. I wanted to.
I think, well, you know, as long as what you're doing is real,
Yeah.
means something,
Yeah.
you're usually okay.
Yeah.
Can do it this way. They can be.
Yeah. I'm going to take, by the way, I brought some of these little alcohol
Oh, yes.
things. Okay, I'm gonna take my mask off.
Okay.
What?
I'm going to start with the opening song.
Is that, okay,
And then you,
okay. Should I sit with the opening song, or no, we're gonna stand?
good morning, da 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 da. And if you recognize that reference, you get a prize. Good morning. I invite you to stand if the Spirit so moves you and you're willing and able, and join in singing our opening song, number 123, Spirit of Life. And we'll go through it once.
Good morning. Welcome to church today at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Venice, also known as Universalist. Okay, thank you. My name is Serena Canarelli, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees here at UCOV. As stated in our mission statement, we are a welcoming, caring community for all those seeking spiritual growth, meaning in life, and pursuing justice for all. All are welcome who walk through our doors. An open door is a welcome that makes a stranger a friend. So all are welcome here as long as you don't close the doors behind you. Here we celebrate our differences as we learn from one another. I'd like to wish all the fathers a happy Father's Day today, and all of the fathers who may be tuning in, happy Father's Day to you. Before we get to some of the announcements and other welcoming things, I want to share with you, as part of my welcome to those of you who are here, a reading from someone who is quite special to this congregation. And I think just this reading will be more thought-provoking than our scripted, typical welcome. So here it is, and I'll tell you later who wrote it. Let our church be, in its own way, a gift which each of us present to the other. But even more, let it be a gift from each of us to our community. Let us be a gathering place for the Spirit, a refuge of hope, a beacon of inspiration, a dynamo of life and justice for all. Let us be faithful, this faithful community be our ground of being, commitment and action by which to reimagine and reshape our world. Do we have, and I'm going to acknowledge who that is in a minute. If you'd like to know more about this congregation and its many opportunities for learning, growth, and connection, you can peruse our calendar and announcements on Facebook, our Facebook page, and our web page at ucov.org. Do we have any new visitors here, new folks who haven't been here before? Would you mind standing and identifying who you are and where you're from?
I'm Kathleen, and I live full-time here now. So, thank you.
Welcome. Welcome.
I'm Kara Johnson, and I live in Osprey, and I'm actually here with Lisa, and I'll be substituting for Lisa in July, so thank you. I'm really
Oh, great. Thank you. Welcome, Lisa. Okay. I'd like to have announcements. We don't have a little handout today of announcements, do we? No. Okay. And you can start passing the baskets if you wish. And I'm going to have Mo come up here because she has an important announcement this morning. Since we are at the beginning of a great transition and we'll be welcoming our interim minister shortly, this is a time for us going forward to reimagine and reshape together our congregation. Mo?
Thank you. We are looking forward to the arrival of our new interim minister, Reverend Amy Petrie-Shaw, on August 1st. In anticipation of Reverend Amy joining us, the board has assembled a transitions team, as Amy requested. This team will help to welcome, orient, and educate Reverend Amy to UCOV culture, essentially who we are, what we do, and how we do it. We are excited to announce the team to you today and to introduce you to the members. So for the members who are present in sanctuary today, if you would kindly stand when I give your name as you're able and willing. Linda Taylor, Trudy Jacoby, Dale Povenmire, and thank you all for sitting in a row back there, and Marcia Smith. We thank you all for taking on this important role and for ushering us into the next chapter of our journey together. Thank you.
The only other announcement that I have this morning is we are still at a very high level in Sarasota County for COVID infection, unfortunately. So we're going to continue on with our masks and until the numbers come down. And just a reminder, in the sanctuary, definitely in our other buildings, if you're just a small group getting together for a meeting, as long as you're distanced, you don't have to worry about a mask. But if you're a group larger than 10, which probably isn't happening now, just distance. The author of the little reading that I did is none other than Reverend Dennis McCarty. And it comes from a book that he has published, and I've had next to my bedside and read from it, Thoughts from a Gentle Atheist. He will begin our service.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Serena. I've read in the newspaper about people catching COVID, Happily, I'm pleased to announce that I'm back down to one line on my antigen test, so I'm no longer Typhoid Dennis. It's a good thing. Each morning, sorry about that. I'll sit back down and we'll listen to some music. I swear I'll get the order of service figured out shortly after I leave. Each morning is a gift from the universe, a summon to gratitude and grace bestowed by life itself. Let us witness the forms of creation, listen for the call of creation, touch the shape of creation. Let us join in thanks and love and seize the opportunity to play our part in the unfolding of creation. And we'll light the chalice this morning. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, and to shine forth with the best that is in us. And I invite you to stand as you're willing and able and join in singing our opening hymn this morning. We're just going to sing the English words, number 305, De Colores.
Colors we see in the springtime with all of its flowers.
have a responsive reading this morning. And as always, I'll read the straight type, and I invite you to respond with the boldface type. A human being is, at the very depths of our nature, a creature that witnesses. Such moments and endless more besides throw any person's brain into a fury of unique internal connections and reactions, all particular to our species. Religious witness calls us to see and be seen, to hear and be heard, to act and be acted upon. Religious witness acknowledges the world as a wondrous place, but not too wondrous to be made better or humane, in the ways seen and also perhaps unforeseen, even by inquisitive spirits. Religious witness calls us to recognize lives that are different from our own. It calls us to reach outward toward struggles that are different from our own. Religious witness calls us to become something more than we are now by learning from, partnering with our fellow human beings in all their unique searches for realization. And I have a little confession to make this morning on the children's message. Do we have any kids here today? Okay. We're still dealing with COVID and flu and stuff. Hopefully we'll get a real children's message with some children before I leave. But for now, again, we're doing it for children of all ages. And as of about Wednesday of this week, I was going to do a children's message that was generic in nature. And I went to the bank, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, and there was a little note on the front door of the bank saying it was going to be closed Monday the 20th. And I was thinking, that's kind of odd. Flag Day? What? I don't know. And about Thursday or Friday, in the course of reading, online newspapers and one thing and another, it finally dawned on me, today is Juneteenth. And tomorrow is the federal holiday of Juneteenth. And I thought, holy smoke, McCarty, did you ever drop the ball? We need to talk about Juneteenth, of which I knew. My excuse is that I grew up in western Colorado and Utah, Rocky Mountain territory, and I knew virtually zilch about Juneteenth. So I've been studying up on it a bit. So I went out. First thing I thought I'd do, I read about the Juneteenth flag, which is this guy here. And I thought, okay, I'll go out and find a Juneteenth flag, and I'll hold that up for everybody. Okay, I'm going to move forward a little bit, being as how I'm non-toxic these days, so you can see what I'm talking about. It's got the date on it, June 19th, 1865. Which was when General Granger issued General Order Number 3, telling the enslaved people in Texas that they were no longer slaves, because Texas had been cut off from the rest of the Union during the war. So I searched on my phone, Juneteenth flag near me. It said, go to Walmart, or Lowe's, or Home Depot. So I went to Walmart and asked two nice young men. The first one asked, well, where are your flags? And he said, our flags are in hardware, row H2 or whatever. So I went over to Hardware and asked the young man there, do you carry Juneteenth flags? And he said, huh? He said, what's Juneteenth? And I thought, yay, this kid is as dumb as I am. So I soon learned, then after stopping at Home Depot, realized it was going to be a fool's errand to find a Juneteenth flag on the Saturday before Juneteenth. That's what they make internet ordering stuff for. So I printed one out. There it is. And there's a lot of symbolism. I think the two neat pieces that I'll talk about, the star, of course, is the United States star, as per the ones on our flag. But the outline around the star is a nova, as in a star exploding and expanding freedom. And I thought, yay, that's pretty cool. And just so that we'll all be on the same page, CNN, bless their hearts, had a Juneteenth quiz. And I'm going to share it with y'all. 10 questions. Okay, here's number one. Juneteenth commemorates June 19th, 1865, the day Union Major General Gordon Granger, pictured here, informed slaves of their emancipation from slavery in which state? Texas. Texas. Whoa, you guys are good. Granger's announcement came almost 3 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, the famous executive order abolishing slavery issued by which U.S. president? Whoa. I might add, the proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves within states rebelling against the Union are henceforward and shall be free, which meant that nobody was free until the war was over. Which constitutional amendment officially abolished slavery across the United States? Close. 13th. 14th made the federal government the watchdog for human rights at all levels, which is important for separation of church and state because it's not in the original Constitution. That's a whole sermon in itself. Let's see here. Here's one that fooled me. What two Union border states continued to practice slavery up until the 13th Amendment was ratified? Kentucky and Delaware. That was kind of my reaction. How many slaves were estimated to be in the United States in the early 1860s before slavery was outlawed? Yeah, about 4 million, 3.9. 500,000 black individuals lived as free persons during that time, but that was a dicey existence. Which state was the first to recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday? Texas. Which U.S. president signed a bill making Juneteenth a federal holiday? Biden. I learned that Thursday. But I got an excuse. 2020, 2021, they really don't count. But yeah, I only found out this week, duh. A revised red, white, and blue flag honoring Juneteenth was introduced in 2000. What symbol is at the center of the flag? A star, a white star. What is another name often used to refer to Juneteenth? Freedom Day, Emancipation Day, and Jubilee Day. And this was one that left me just totally lost. What beverage was once popular and synonymous with Juneteenth celebrations? Red, correct. It says strawberry soda in the thing, but red drinks, yeah, and red foods to represent the bloodshed by enslaved African ancestors. So now we're all on the same page in Juneteenth, and if the kids were here, we'd sing to them. But alas, we're short on kids this morning, so we'll go to celebrations and sorrows. And thank you for bearing with me during my educational time. This is the time in our service when we acknowledge the high and low points of our lives, the thin places and in our lives. So if you have a trial or a triumph to share from the past week, raise your hand and I'll bring the mic to you. I believe the tradition was personal brief and non-political.
Hi, I'm Linda Engel, and I just feel really fortunate that this Father's Day I get to celebrate it with my dad. He's still alive, and I'm living with him, and I got to do little things. I put his clothes in the dryer for him. But I am very grateful. Thank you.
My daughters are hee-heeing over a cartoon this morning of two women sitting on a couch and one saying, "For Father's Day, I'm going to let Dad explain a Bruce Springsteen song to me." Yeah, that's me, all right. Other celebrations from the past week. How about sorrows and concerns? Well, I'm a little concerned just because there is a lot of COVID out there. Be safe, guys. You just never know what's waiting around the corner. And also, Kathy Avery found out, actually more than a week ago, that she had gotten COVID and flu at the same time, which it turns out is kind of a thing in Southern. So take care of yourselves. I don't have snappy answers to things like that. We lift up those who are traveling, who are away from us for the summer, who are dealing with sickness or infirmity, and hold within our hearts all who suffer or grieve or celebrate. We pray each in our own way into the silence. The hopes in this community are offered forth in the names of all those who have gone before, in the names of all those who will come after, in the names of all the helpers of humankind. Shalom, salam. Blessed be, and amen. For our reading this morning, I have a series of quotes from various film critics and scholars on director Guillermo del Toro's movie, The Shape of Water. Rachel Hatzipanagos writes in the Washington Post, quote, "The Shape of Water demonstrates the magic of diverse perspective, where an artist can shape a story that's informed by his own cultural heritage. Praise for the movie has centered on how it draws inspiration from classic monster stories. Less has been said about how the film speaks to the Latin American experience. It tells the story of Eliza Esposito, a janitor at a top-secret U.S. government facility, who falls in love with a fantastical fish-man creature who was once worshipped as a god in the Amazon before being captured by the American government. And the ripping of the creature from the Amazon echoes, for one thing, the harsh realities of colonialism. Europeans robbed, dissected, and repackaged the whole region's resources for profit." British critic Stephen Applebaum writes, "When director Guillermo del Toro first conceived the idea for the film in 2011, the Trump era and its divisive racial rhetoric were still in the future. As a Mexican, however, Del Toro says he is very sensitive on a personal level to the way foreigners are treated. He set The Shape of Water in 1962, but he is really talking about today and what it feels like to be an outsider today, represented by silent Eliza and her fish-out-of-water lover, and also an unemployed gay artist and a black co-worker. The United States of the film is the United States of Make America Great Again. But that United States, Del Toro says, is rotting from within." Anthony Lane writes in The New Yorker, Del Toro also sees that fairy tales dramatized for children are rich in adult desires. For example, the lust that is left out of Disney's Beauty and the Beast, although it's in the original Jean Cocteau movie, is allowed to flow at will through the fable of Eliza and the creature. So grimly accustomed are we to sexual violence on screen that to see sex flourish as a rebuke to violence and a remedy for loneliness, which is what The Shape of Water provides, is a heady and uplifting experience. And finally, Guillermo del Toro himself said in an interview, "We live in a time of fear and hatred and rage. Every day on the news and social media, every day of our lives, we are told to fear something. Fear the other religion, the other this and that, the other gender. But it is time to embrace that there is no other. There is no us and them. On this planet, there is only us." And Lisa's going to play the interlude, and we're going back to, I guess you'd say African American by way of England, arranger Samuel Coleridge Taylor, and I got it wrong last week. I said he had composed Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child. He'd arranged it, and he's also arranged this piece. This is the third service in my series using motion pictures as a lens through which to study America's cultural subconscious. Mexican director Guillermo del Toro's masterpiece, The Shape of Water, peers into our national culture and assesses it from the viewpoint of a stranger, a foreigner, and an ethnic minority. And the result is both moving and informative. The movie is an excellent example of the richness we can gain with a culturally diverse approach. The Shape of Water was a big box office success and also won many awards, including Academy Awards for Best Picture and Best Director. That's not that important. Most importantly to me, though, it is full of visual poetry, music, and a kind of insightful, multi-layered viewpoint and spirituality. And I'll start with the film Del Toro says inspired The Shape of Water, the 1954 horror movie Creature from the Black Lagoon. But Del Toro explores beyond that old movie into the 1950s social attitudes around it to comment on our own time. The United States came out of the Second World War as the world's leading economic and military power. At the same time, we were locked in a genuinely scary nuclear arms race, the so-called Cold War with the Soviet Union. Anti-communist witch hunts were going full force. There was even a religious element to the Cold War. Congress changed our national motto from E pluribus unum, which refers to 13 separate states forming one unified nation, to In God We Trust, mostly to prove how much better we were than those godless communists over in Russia. So when reactionaries talk now about Make America Great Again, it invokes nostalgia for the way things were in the 1950s. We saw ourselves not just as the world's military leader, but also as the world's moral and religious leader. But as Del Toro says in the reading this morning, that kind of nostalgia risks being rotten at its very core. Violent bigotry, sexism, racism, homophobia were the norm in the 1950s. So The Shape of Water is about more than just playing with images from the Creature from the Black Lagoon. Del Toro is also looking at the bigotry and self-righteousness of that era and its reflection in our own time. Now, most horror and science fiction movies in the 1950s were shot fast and cheap with pretty standardized plots. We believed we had saved the world in the Second World War. In 1950s creature features, we saved the world from all kinds of monsters. Giant apes, King Kong was re-released in 1952. Giant dinosaurs, giant insects, you name it, we saved the world from it. What some of these movies lacked in money, they made up for with enthusiasm and ingenious, if cheesy, special effects. Creature from the Black Lagoon doesn't even have that. It's just a guy in a bad rubber fish suit. And in fact, it's hard to figure out why it's a classic while better movies have been forgotten. Partly, I think, it was shot underwater at the leading edge of a fad for underwater movies and television shows, but also I think it speaks of the sexual paranoia in mid-century patriarchal culture. The Gill Man, as they call him, is an evolutionary leftover from the Devonian period, the age of fishes, 400 million years ago. He lives in a remote backwater of South America's Amazon River. He's a vicious killer. He murders several indigenous South Americans. Typical of 1950s white nationalism and patriarchy, though, he meets his match when a team of American scientists shoot him full of holes because, ancient fish though he is, he tries to kidnap a white woman. And despite the silliness of a 400 million year old man-fish lusting after a Euro-American or any other woman, that plot device was a monster movie cliche. King Kong basically did the same thing. From the birth of a nation on, sexual paranoia has been part and parcel of our culture. In the first sequel, Revenge of the Creature, scientists take the Gill Man to Florida, where the creature's lust for the blonde heroine turns him into an out-and-out stalker. And to me, that was the creepiest thing about that movie, that a woman stalking fish was seen as a reasonable plot device. Finally, in the last sequel, The Creature Walks Among Us, scientists accidentally burn off all the creature's fishy scales and then dress him in a rude suit of clothes. The Gill Man stops lusting after the heroine, and he actually turns into kind of a hero. At the end, he kills the movie's awful mad scientist villain, and then he escapes back into the ocean. But that movie's most interesting moment for me was a prediction. And I'm quoting, "Modern humanity is limited, earthbound to this planet, which we devour, and which eventually will fail to support us." Close quote. 65 years later, that's pretty much where we are. What's scary in the movie, though, is that these words are spoken not by the good guys, but by the mad scientist. Sustainability was just crazy talk back in the 1950s. The Shape of Water uses images from all three movies. Like the Gill Man, Guillermo del Toro's Amphibian Man was captured in South America, but Del Toro uses an actual South American folk tale, the Yacaruna, or Water Man. And that's an indigenous South American legend. The Yacaruna is a river spirit with magical powers, including the power to heal, but he can also lure careless women and children away, never to be seen again. And for what it's worth, just free plug here, the Brazilian-made Netflix series Invisible City is all about Brazil's indigenous spirit beings and how industrial culture threatens them. And it's actually quite good. Back to The Shape of Water, the U.S. Army captures Amphibian Man and brings him to a secret CIA laboratory in Baltimore. His keeper is brutal Captain Strickland, a Bible-quoting sadist. And Strickland mocks indigenous beliefs about Amphibian Man's supernatural powers and tortures him every chance he gets. But the movie's real heroine is Eliza Esposito, a janitor at the lab who happens to be mute. She is attracted to Amphibian Man right from the beginning and finds him to be intelligent, sensitive, and curious, and she teaches him music and sign language and feeds him hard-boiled eggs. Of course, water and eggs can be erotic symbols, and The Shape of Water is quite erotic in a much deeper way than just a man in a fish suit having a man in a fish suit stalk curvaceous blondes in skimpy clothes. Eliza is passionate, smart, and determined. Because she can't speak, she's also kind of a fish out of water herself, and so are her best friends. Giles is an unemployed, closeted gay artist, and Zelda, her fellow cleaning lady, is a black woman. And that just scratches the surface of Del Toro's theme weaving. I can't sort it all out in one sermon, but I can't resist exploring a couple of particular references. One, Del Toro draws from a lot of movies and television shows, ranging from the biblical movie epic, The Story of Ruth, to musicals, to the old television sitcom, Dobie Gillis. And each one adds a separate layer of thematic complexity. For example, I don't know how many folks are old enough to remember Dobie Gillis, but it was an influential comedy back in the late 1950s and also early 1960s, which Del Toro has playing in the background in Giles' apartment. In the TV show, going back in time here, Dobie lusts after the beautiful, rich Thalia Menninger, but he has no chance with her. She's way too good for him. Instead, the average-looking girl genius, Zelda Gilroy, is after him. Not because he's good-looking, she says, but because she knows how much he needs her to take care of him. Now, in case you didn't notice, her name, Zelda, is also the name Del Toro chose for Eliza's best friend, Zelda Fuller, who also kind of takes care of Eliza as well as her own husband. Zelda Gilroy was played by Sheila James, full name Sheila James Kuehl, and she actually is a genius. She later studied law, became a dean at UCLA's law school, and then became the first out lesbian in California's state assembly. And she now chairs the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. Like Eliza and Giles in the movie, and the movie's Zelda, she was also a fish out of water. It's quite a remarkable story. She was a truly remarkable fish out of water. For one thing, she got thrown out of her sorority for having a same-sex girlfriend. Another lesson, or another reference, is best shown with a couple of photographs. Here's a photo I took of, because I didn't want to violate any copyright, the Amphibian Man collectible action figure in a standard pose, chained to a raised platform on the laboratory floor. In the movies, Captain Strickland, who is just a horrible person, chains him there and tortures him with a cattle prod. Now, here's a photo from the 1923 silent movie, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The hunchback, Quasimodo, is chained to a raised pillory, being unjustly punished. The gypsy dancer, Esmeralda, is giving him water, and in the shape of water, Eliza and the amphibian man strike exactly this same pose for about a second. You really have to be watching to catch it. Guillermo del Toro grew up Catholic. He left the church, but Catholic symbolism still has meaning for him. French novelist Victor Hugo, who wrote The Hunchback of Notre Dame, also grew up Catholic. And del Toro is riffing off what Victor Hugo had to say about religious hypocrisy, including clergy hypocrisy and clergy sexual misconduct. In The Shape of Water, Eliza Esposito was an orphan. Her last name, Esposito, means foundling in Italian. There's a detail the Hunchback movies don't mention, but the novel does. Beautiful Esmeralda, the gypsy, is also a foundling. To put it as quickly as I can, the parallel between Esmeralda and Eliza is precise, and it's no accident. Of course, if Eliza equals Esmeralda, then Amphibian Man parallels the Hunchback himself, Quasimodo. Amphibian Man's vicious keeper, Captain Strickland, despises him and calls him a monstrosity. Quasimodo's keeper, in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, is Archdeacon Dom Claude Frollo, who parallels Strickland. Frollo gave Quasimodo his name, which is Latin for half-man. Like Captain Strickland, Frollo sees Quasimodo as less than human. And at the end of the book, Quasimodo winds up killing Frollo, and the amphibian man likewise kills Strickland. Both Strickland and Archdeacon Frollo are cruel, self-righteous, religious hypocrites. Frollo lusts after Esmeralda. She spurns his advances, so he has her hanged. Quasimodo, who has fallen hopelessly in love with Esmeralda, so that when Frollo has her hanged, Quasimodo kills Frollo. Like Frollo, Strickland pretends to be the picture of morality, but secretly he hates his adoring family because they're too noisy. Strickland lusts after Eliza, because she's mute and he wants a lover who will be quiet during sex. As with Esmeralda and Frollo, though, Eliza turns Strickland down. All Strickland's religious and moral hypocrisy about being a decent man made in the image of God with American family values are, as Del Toro puts it, rotting from the inside. And as Del Toro makes plain, it's not just Strickland. The whole structure of that society is rotten with intolerance, religious self-righteousness, and hypocrisy. And the project's commanding general says to Strickland, quote, "Decency is just an American export. We sell it, but we don't use it ourselves." Now that's about as scathing as a critique can get. And Del Toro has said that it's not just about the 1950s, but also about present-day nostalgia for that time. We export decency, we don't use it ourselves. And that's a real call to moral and religious humility. The movie builds real religious tension between Strickland's dogmatism and cruelty on the one side and Eliza's sense of mystery and spiritual wonder on the other, and the real spiritual wonder of the amphibian man himself. Or to put it into Unitarian Universalist terms, Strickland's self-righteous authoritarianism versus Eliza's covenantal relationship. And to me, the most touching scene in the movie is when Eliza finds out about the Army's plan to dissect the amphibian man while he's still alive to find out how he breathes. And she brings this to her gay friend Giles, Gillis, Gilroy, Gilman. Every name in this movie has at least one double meaning and sometimes more. Eliza pounds the wall and signs to Giles, "You're not hearing me." She passionately explains in sign language what the amphibian man is, what their relationship means to her, and that they have to find a way to save him. And Giles isn't having it. "We are nothing," he tells her. "We can do nothing. Why, he's not even human." And Eliza pounds the wall again and signs, "If we do nothing, then neither are we." And I never before realized that a person could shout in sign language, but she doesn't. And that sign, even talking about it, kind of brings tears to my eyes. Our culture sends many unspoken signals. Like, say, a guy like me doesn't have to know what Juneteenth is all about. We send many unspoken signals how the marginalized are less than full members of our culture. And if we do nothing to really see and really hear and really listen to and learn from people different from ourselves, then we also lose the opportunity to be more fully human ourselves. And even self-professed liberals like me make that mistake. I've made it plenty of times. For 200 years, despite good and sincere good intentions, the American Unitarian Association, the Universalist Church in America, and the Unitarian Universalist Association have all been historically dominated by white men. Only in this century did we elect our first non-white male as UUA president, Bill Sinkford. And the only reason we elected a female president in 2017 is that only women were nominated. As you may know, right now, there are voices that would have you believe that there's no need for Unitarian Universalism to adapt our historically middle-class, white, still too patriarchal culture to better invite marginalized identities who have not historically found us welcoming. But what traditionalists fail to understand, that I think Guillermo del Toro does understand in his words, is that there is no us and them, there's only us. And we need to lead American culture into that change, not be dragged kicking and screaming into the future ourselves. That's my opinion, anyway. Now, certainly, the movie villainy of a Captain Strickland is absolutely more stark than a white male liberal who just doesn't want to re-examine old cultural assumptions. It's possible to mean quite well while still being rigidly set in old behavior patterns toward women, gender nonconforming people, different ethnicities, or people with different kinds of disabilities. It's also possible to be a combination of privilege and marginalization. Our society is extremely complex, and human beings are complex. But since 2017, when it was revealed just how patriarchal and Eurocentric UUA hiring practices still were, the association has worked hard to listen to marginalized voices. And The Shape of Water is kind of a metaphor for how beautiful and rich that kind of diversity can be. But diversity does call us to acknowledge attitudes and subconscious beliefs we may not even realize we have. Real diversity, really seeing, hearing, listening to, and most importantly, learning from people with lives unlike our own can, I believe, become a beautiful thing. In my opinion, this work is just beginning to bloom into a real flower of justice, equity, and compassion. And I believe our association has a chance to live the second principle in an authentic, new way, at new depth. We totally are not doing it perfectly. Progress rarely is perfect. But as The Shape of Water shows, diversity can be beautiful. Roles and relationships do become richer when they're not defined by old assumptions. So in challenging times, may we nurture that beauty and that depth. Blessed be, and amen. Now I invite you to stand as you're willing and able, and close our service by rocking out a little bit with hymn number 1028 from the Teal hymnal, The Fire of Commitment. The chalice is extinguished. Let each of us go forth to share the gifts we have to share. Let us accept the gifts of others gratefully and without judgment. Let us lift the cup of life and drink in cognizance of all those who share life's cup. Let us be mindful of the multitudes who have been, who are, and who have yet to be. And let us never forget that what we yearn for and deserve, others deserve also. As we go from this place, may the glow of love and enlightenment guide our way, and may the rhythm of our footsteps soothe and bless the earth so long as we walk upon it. Blessed be, and amen.